Hashem Na'aseh v'Natzliach. First, I'd like to thank Torah Anytime. Can you hear me? You can hear me? First, I'd like to thank Torah Anytime for Hashem helping publicize our Torah Shiurim. Also Chazaq for giving us an opportunity to spread the word, and for everything they've done even before they knew I existed, for Am Yisrael, and also for the amazing hosts of Bet Gavriel that have hosted us for this extraordinary Shabbaton, this opportunity to connect to another part of Am Yisrael. Some of you have heard my personal story. I'm not here to tell you my personal story. If you want to watch it, and with details, you can go on TorahAnytime.com, or you can go on Be'ezratHashem.org, which is our website, and you can watch it there and see the details. I'll give you a few footnotes of the story, and perhaps why I think it's most appropriate to have somebody who knows what suffering is tell you a little bit about the Churban Bet HaMikdash. We just finished Megillat Eicha in a generation that was not very different than before I did Tshuva, who actually thought that Eicha was a name. I thought it was a name of a prophet. I thought it was a name of a person. Most Jews till today still don't know what it is. It actually means how. How did we get into this type of trouble? How did we lose the most holy thing that ever existed? How it happened? In Megillat Eicha, chapter 3, verse 1, the prophet Jeremiah says, Ani hagever ha'ani b'shevet evrato. I am the man who has seen affliction by the rod of his wrath. He's saying to Klal Yisrael forever, I know what it looks like to suffer. I know what disaster looks like. If someone tells you a story, it's a little different if they lived it. So to give you a little bit of an understanding, most people in today's generation think that Gehenom is something that's part of a fairy tale. It's something that's very far away, and in some cases there are some false people that call themselves rabbis that actually say that it doesn't exist, even though it's all over the Torah, the Gemara, the Zohar, and many places. There's two versions of it. One is here, and one is in a faraway place that no one wants to believe in. Baruch Hashem, I had the zchut of seeing the one that is here. We moved to the United States when I was 10 years old. I became very successful at a very young age, making $1 million by the time I was 23 years old, and as disconnected from Hashem Yitbarach as it could possibly be. I got to a point like Klal Yisrael that is not connected to Hashem and started making my own rules. Eventually Hashem fulfilled his promise in the Torah, which is that you have to serve him whether you like it or not. In the book of Ezekiel, Hashem is making a promise to each and every single one of us. At the end of days, whether you like it or not, you will serve him. Some of us have an opportunity to do it a little sooner. I didn't think so. I didn't think that I qualified. So I made my own rules, continued making millions, and eventually in November 18, 2006, a simple surgery that was supposed to take an hour and a half and maybe be uncomfortable for a couple of days turned my life upside down, and for the next 7 years I suffered pain from the bottom of my neck to the bottom of my feet 24 hours a day, to such an extent that at some point I became an experiment as part of a study of what happens to someone that no one has a clue why it happened. They started putting all types of chemicals in my body, ozone in my blood system, vitamins, steroids like the athletes take, Not fun. Of course, at this point, all the money that I ever had becomes worthless. And all the friends that I used to have, because you tend to gain friends when you have money, suddenly became enemies. And little by little, Hashem started showing me who runs the world. In the beginning, I thought that it's just a bad experience and it's going to be over. But slowly but surely, I saw that there is, not only is it not a bad experience, but I got to a point where I thought it was never going to be over. Most of Am Yisrael in today's world is living in a situation with the same type of mentality I had at that very moment, where we think that we can just do whatever we want, and one day we'll work it out with Hashem. One day we'll get up there and we'll figure out how we can work it out. We'll negotiate with Him. Baruch Hashem, some of us have an opportunity to negotiate with Him here. And I would recommend for all of us to start. Many people ask a common question: where was God during the Holocaust? The most tragic event that happened in recent history. One where we lost 6 million of our brothers and sisters in a horrendous way, with torture that you cannot even explain, a disaster that puts my little bit of suffering to look like a kindergarten. And they asked this question: where was God? The answer is very simple. It's hard to hear, but it's simple. He did it. How do we know He did it? Because He gave us 2 parashot in the Torah telling us that this is exactly what He's going to do. It's the 2 parashot that in our generation most people don't even like to read, let alone read out loud in the Beknesset. Parashat Bechukotai, Parashat Ki Tavo. So the next question is, why did He do it? For the very same reason that we just learned in Megillat Eicha, Am Yisrael sinned. Combination of modernizing the Torah, starting to get to a point where Reform Judaism and Conservative Judaism became acceptable, despite the fact that it's 100% heresy, wanting to be more and more like the Goyim. Instead of showing off our Torah knowledge and our closeness to Hashem, we show off our money. Assimilation to such an extent that at certain parts of Germany, there was over 80% assimilation. Jews marrying Goyim and not thinking there's anything wrong with it. The sad news is that recent statistics came out, and they say that we're actually in a worse situation today. A recent over 10 couples are going to end their connection to Hashem Yitbarach and Judaism altogether forever. And the one is a maybe, because he may be a Chiloni anyway. He just happened to be lucky enough to. Why is all of this happening? Why are we repeating the same mistakes? In Megillat Eicha, Jeremiah gives us the news, and he tells us that Hashem is not kidding, that the punishment continues to get worse. But because most of us don't really understand the holy language, we read it and we make the sounds, but we don't really understand the meaning. This is why the rabbi yesterday, or today also, mentioned that anyone that hasn't read it and understands the words, they should read it in the language they speak, So you understand the disaster. In Parashat Bechukotai, Hashem gives us 5 levels of curses. Each one gets worse. He says, if you treat me, you treat me like a happenstance, like the disaster that's happening in your life is a coincidence. It's a mikre. It's just bad luck. It's not me pulling the strings. In addition to not doing tshuva, you're treating it like it's not a big deal. I'm going to give you an additional punishment. One punishment for not doing tshuva, and one punishment for treating it like a happenstance. And each to be in Parashat Bechukotai, and unfortunately he ended up being one of these people that still think Shabbat is optional. So he was at the Beit Knesset and I asked him, you know, it says in the Torah that violence than murder. And I started giving so much so that the Rambam says a Jew that violates Shabbat is considered 100% idol worshiper. Now in Hebrew it says nichshav kegoy lechol davar. He's considered a goy. But that's not the English, because a goy just means a nation. And as a matter of fact, there's part of the nations that are considered chasdei umot ha'olam. They're considered the righteous amongst the nations. The righteous goyim that keep the 7 Noahide laws will have olam haba. They have Gan Eden. So a Jew that doesn't keep the mitzvot, he doesn't become one of them. A Jew that drives on Shabbat doesn't become one of those tzaddikim that's going to have olam haba and is going to see Job. He's not going to be there. Rambam explains, a Jew that drives on Shabbat, whether it's to Beit Knesset or to the mall, a Jew that cuts himself away from Judaism is considered an idol worshiper, which is the worst possible thing you could be considered as. Unfortunately, most of us don't know this. So Hashem said that one of the sins is Chilul Shabbat, but there's many others. There's wasting seed. There is modesty or immodesty. There's many, many other things that Hashem told us to do and not to do. But every time we make a sin, we'll get punished. But if we treat it like it's not a big deal, not only do we make the sin, but on top of it, we make it like it's not a big deal that I'm sinning, he says that for that it's a separate punishment. So in Parashat Bechukotai, he finished, there was the final levels of punishment, and he told us this. ואכלתם בשר בניכם ובשר בנותיכם תאכלו. Am Yisrael, chas v'shalom, you will eat the flesh of your sons and the flesh of your daughters. Meaning we will get to such level of starvation that we'll have to eat our children. Bar minan. Now most people that haven't read the Torah or history books think this is just Hashem is trying to show emotions. He's trying to show us that you better listen to me. You know, like the bully that pretends like he's going to swing, but he's really not planning on doing anything. But then we have Megillat Echa. And Jeremiah, who was a first-hand witness, told us exactly what happened. And if you remember in chapter 4, he told us that Am Yisrael's babies were dying from starvation at the bosom of their mothers, and then the merciful mothers would boil their children. and eat them. Hashem is telling you here, I didn't just write it. It happened. Now how does this connect to the Holocaust and an answer why of Holocaust happened? Obviously we already have an answer of why it happened, but another reason that we need to know and understand is Hashem makes drastic decisions, drastic moves, and even the Holocaust was one of the tools Hashem had to use in order to wake us up. That happened during the Bet HaMikdash HaRishon and the Bet HaMikdash HaSheni, it is a good time to mourn all the major losses that have happened to Am Yisrael during this time of Tisha B'Av. If you look at history, we have the spies came back in the desert with Lashon Hara against the land, Lashon Hara against Moshe Rabbeinu, and worse than all, Lashon Hara against Hashem Yitbarach himself, saying he only took us out of Egypt because he hates us. By today's foolishness. And then we have Hashem telling so as Hashem will have it, the Churban Bet HaMikdash HaRishon on Tisha B'Av also. The Spanish Inquisition, 1492, happens on Tisha B'Av. And from what I read recently, even World War II started on Tisha B'Av. If the first two were coincidence, you still can't explain the next 5 or 10 events. Rabbi Meir Mazuz says that this is a time for us to mourn for Am Yisrael. Rabbeinu Yechezkel, in his book Kaf HaKela, he was talking about being in the Holocaust. And he wrote in his book, the worst part of it, the worst part of the Holocaust, that the parents will eat their children came true. He says one of these days these Reshaim Merushaim Nazis made the Jewish people work non-stop to such an extent let them stop without drinking, without eating, without even breathing like a normal person. Everyone came back to camp. And they saw that there's a Nazi soldier cooking in a giant pot. And everyone was so hungry and thirsty, they couldn't ask any questions. They thought, to their own logic, which you cannot blame them, maybe this is a reward for the slavery we went through. Maybe these Nazis actually have a heart. So they ran to the pot and just started grabbing whatever they can see, whatever meat they can see, and started eating. It was the first time they saw meat in years. Eventually one of the Jews runs from the camp that wasn't part of them. He says, "No! These are your children. These are your brothers and sisters, Hashem Yirachem." Imagine a mother that has to do such a thing. You should imagine, today at least. One of the reasons that Jeremiah says all of this happened is because we didn't have enough people telling people the truth. We had the #1 poison in today's generation already active nearly 2,000 years ago. It's called political correctness. It's called being nice to people because you don't want to hurt their feelings. The problem with political correctness is that it's pretty much knowing someone is going to die, but you don't want to tell him because you don't want to hurt his feelings. And this may be a problem. If two people have an option, two people obviously have a disaster in their life, and the doctor knows that two people are going to die, and one he decides to tell, and the other guy he doesn't say anything. Who's better off? The one who doesn't know. That's what it sounds like usually. That's what political correctness also sounds like. Why? The one who knows, he finds out he's going to die. Initially he's going to be depressed, but after a week, 2 weeks, life. So to call his wife, his kids, his parents, his friends, his family, whoever he can. He's going to spend quality time with all those people and try to live the last year of his life happy, praying for salvation. The other guy that we all think in our natural human logic is better off for not knowing, what's he doing the next year? He goes to work. And he decides to work overtime because he wants to save up for a vacation for year #2 that he's never going to see. And he wants to save in his IRA account. And he wants to save for all these wonderful things that he's never going to see. And he works overtime, so he says, listen, it's a sacrifice. I'm not going to see my family practically this whole year, but next year I'm going to see them. When he realizes the plan was not as he planned, unfortunately it's not too late. And there's no one in the world he's going to be more angry at than the doctor that told him the false news. The prophet Jeremiah told us that many of the prophets of his time did not want to rebuke the people. They also want to be politically correct. Why? Jeremiah says to Hashem Yitbarach, when Hashem picks him and chooses him to be a prophet, he says, which prophet told the nation the truth and they did not want to stone him? I'm just a young guy. I don't want to die. I don't want to tell these people that they're going to be punished. And Hashem says, I picked you because you're young. You haven't been tainted yet. You don't even know what political correctness is yet. So Jeremiah, on the first day that he went to Klal Yisrael and started rebuking them, chapter 15 of verse 19 in Jeremiah, Jeremiah curses the day he was born. Why? Because he went to the tribe of Ephraim and he told them, listen, I see that you guys are all wasting seed on purpose. A topic that our generation doesn't even know what it means. For anyone who wants to know, we have a 3-hour shiur on TorahAnytime.com. It's unfortunately the longest shiur about the topic available on the internet in the English language. He sees the tribe of Ephraim wasting seed, b'mezid, on purpose. And he says to them, you know that for this type of sin, the Gehenom doesn't end. So what do? They don't like to hear the truth. They force him to waste seed. So he curses the day he was born. So we lived in a generation of the Choban Bet HaMikdash where we fulfilled the prophecy of Pnei Ador ke Pnei HaKelev. a nation full of chutzpanim. People didn't know what modesty was. So Jeremiah says to Hashem, look at the situation that I'm in. I have to go tell Am Yisrael the truth. I have to go tell them things they don't want to hear. It's like going to rebuke your mother about inappropriate behavior, to such an extent that Jeremiah explains to us, he says, I'm going to reprove a woman, telling her that she's a sotah. She's a wayward woman. She's accused of cheating on her husband. And then I find out that the woman is my mother. So I wanted to come to Am Yisrael and give him good news, but instead I'm telling them that destruction is about to come. The word sotah has a very special meaning in our generation. Rav Nisim Yagen, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, said, I never understood why women of our generation want to look like the sotah. The sotah is not exactly a compliment. The sotah is someone that's accused of cheating on a husband, and they have to test her by drinking the bitter waters. But before she drinks the bitter waters, they put pressure on her and embarrass her. And the main event that happens before she drinks the waters, that's the final test, they take off her kisui rosh. Because they said that even someone that cheats on a husband is still not bold enough to show her hair to the public. So the question is today, why do so many Jewish women today want to look like the sotah and show her hair? It's not a compliment. Why is it sometimes that we have things that are plain and simple in the Torah, we decide to make our own rules like I used to? We have to take things into consideration. Because when the mother decides to show her hair to the public, or better yet, cover it with a wig and think that it's okay by all poskim, which is a problem of its own, but nonetheless, the next generation is usually worse than the previous. So in this generation, I don't think it fits, but
The new one.
oh Hashem. Well. Huh? Yeah. So in this generation, our women today took the sotah to the next level and decided, okay, so if we made a new rule over the last 100 years that you don't have to cover your hair with a scarf or a hat, let's also stop covering our bodies too. And that's why every time you walk outside, December in New York, or January or February or any of these months, it doesn't make a difference. Women have gone to the point today where they think that the less clothes they have, the better they look. We're so far from the foundation of the message from Hashem that we're doing everything the opposite. Is to make sure that we realize that what he wrote in the Torah is still very, very valid. In chapter 1, verse 4 of the book of Eicha, it says, Ne'enachim betulei anugot, ve'imar la. Our maidens grieve and she's embittered. The Midrash here says that the Reshaim Merushaim Goyim took 3 boats of young Jewish kids full of virgins in order to use them as their pleasure. But Klal Yisrael, the young kids at least, were very, very holy. And when the girls found out that this is what they're going to be used for, they decided to jump into the water and kill themselves. When the boys saw that the girls jumped into the water, and they also jumped into the water and killed themselves. It's in Masechet Gittin, page 57b. The story you may have not heard is a story of Sarah Schneer. Sarah Schneer took over a Bet Yaakov, a girls' school, in the days of the Holocaust. And one day, the Nazis come to the Bet Yaakov, full of 93 young girls that have never been tainted by anything tameh, never been touched by anything that's not kosher, holy kedoshim. And these Reshaim Merushaim Nazis took these young girls, and after torturing them for a couple of days, they put them into a fancy rooms, and Sarah Schneer knew what was happening. She knew that right now they tried to break their spirit first, just like Paro did to Am Yisrael. Hitler did the same thing. And after trying to break their spirits, they figured that, you know what? Already prepared poison. And she told the young girls, we have to be the Bnot Yisrael. We cannot let these goyim touch us. We cannot let anything impure taint our holiness. Because when you're a Jewish woman, you're considered a queen. You're not a regular person, whether you like it or not. You're not allowed to make your body public property. Not for viewing and not for touching. So those 93 young girls drank the poison. And the only thing that was left was a letter from Sarah Schneer telling the story of what they did and asking Am Yisrael to say Kaddish on them. 93 young girls that died for Kiddush Hashem, so the Goyim don't touch them. So can you explain to me why Am Yisrael right now is volunteering their bodies by showing it to the world, walking around half naked, by thinking that it's okay to have a boyfriend, by living together like you're married, and it's sometimes even Hashem and Hashem living in the parents' house? The reason why is because we don't know these stories. In Masechet Ta'anit, Rabbi Eliezer ben Orkenos, one of the greatest sages that ever lived, one of the rabbis of Rabbi Akiva, knew it as a decree from Shamayim. Am Yisrael has made sins. There's a decree from Shamayim that something has to be done. He told Am Yisrael that it's time to pray. But when everyone left the Beit Knesset, he saw them just going back about their business. The fast was over, and everyone was going back, playing with their iPhones, checking the baseball game, seeing how much money they made on Sunday. No big deal. Rabbi Eliezer ben Holkinos was a little different than us. Rabbi Eliezer ben Holkinos said that if all of the ink, all of the water in the ocean was ink, and all of the trees were and what he knew was not even 1% of the Torah that was available out there. So when Rabbi Eliezer ben Holkinos saw Am Yisrael treating a decree from Shamayim like it's not a big deal, he asked the Keilah, did you finish digging your own graves for the upcoming death that's coming? The entire Keilah started crying hysterically. No. And then he told them, now the Gezerah is over. Now the decree is over. Now you did tshuva. During this extraordinary day, you have to find a way to cry. If it's not for what's happened in the past, at least you should cry for what. Think that we're in an okay situation. Am Yisrael is in a relatively good financial situation. In the land of Israel, Israel is considered the leading nation in the world, only challenged by Silicon Valley. We constantly talk about the power of IDF and all the fancy missiles they have. We forgot the fact that during the Churban of Beit HaMikdash, we had better missiles, we had better weapons. We were much, much stronger relative to the time. But none of it helped us. So we constantly compliment Eretz Yisrael for Tzal, for IDF and Mossad and all these really smart people. Okay. In America, Jews control a large part of the economy. Most people think that this is a good thing. But according to Jeremiah, as we learned from Yaakov Avinu, it's a bigger test to be rich than to be poor. I'm not saying that everyone should go burn their money tomorrow and become poor, but I'm just trying to give you a perspective of where we stand and what perspective we have to have. Having a diagnosis, maybe, just maybe, we can find a cure. When I had my sickness, the unexplained sickness, I explained to everyone that worse than all the pain, worse than all the money loss, millions of dollars running out of the door, friends becoming enemies, having pain as if a large knife is being stabbed into my body, but it's also connected to the wall outlet at the same time. Having infection after infection in different parts of my That wasn't the worst part. Yes, living in pain is terrible. Losing money is not fun. When there was no more, they went away. In Hebrew they say, it's better to have a dog as a friend than a friend that's a dog. So now, millions of dollars being spent, doctor appointments and over 50 doctors. No one can give me a diagnosis. I didn't care about a cure. I only wanted a diagnosis. Not having a diagnosis eliminated my hope. And it's a few sicknesses. One is political correctness that we talked about. It's a disease that's swarming the land. The other one is ignorance. But the ignorance, if you don't think that anything that Hashem has said is serious, by being politically correct, you're not going to say anything that's the truth. So someone that's listening once a week is not really going to want to hear it again. It's like, okay, so I went to Shabbat, I heard on Sudah Shlishit the halachot of etrogim. In the middle of the year, I went on Shabbat for Sudah Shlishit. They told me a nice story of why it's good to give tzedakah. Okay, it's not a bad thing. It's just not going to make anyone do tshuva. We have a diagnosis. Question is, can we take the cure? The Admor Mitzanz was told that as part of being in the concentration camp, he had to shave his beard. With the razor. And he says, no. They tortured him, they beat him up, he refused to let up. He refused to let them cut his beard with a razor. Eventually they went to the general and they said, what should we do with this crazy guy? He says, no, you should listen to him. Don't cut it with the razor. Just take a knife and peel his cheeks off. And that's what he let them do. He preferred that they peel his cheeks off than shaving his face with a razor, when many of us who have no idea what you're allowed to shave. You're not obligated to have a beard in Judaism, although it's considered chesed. You're not obligated to have a beard. But you're also not allowed to shave with a razor. And the Admor Mitzanz, who his son today is the Admor in Netanya, in Israel, preferred that they cut his cheeks off than make a sin against Hashem, even though technically he was Anus, he didn't really have to do this. But just to show you that when you're connected to Hashem, glued to Hashem, the thought of sinning is not a possibility. Before this event happened, Klal Yisrael was in Germany. Germany was the America of its day. We were rich, we were powerful, we were in politics. Not different at all than today. tells the story of the Holocaust. And he says that when I was online, the concentration camps, I saw one Jew smashing his head against the wall over and over and over again. And I asked him, why are you doing this? And he refused to respond. He just kept smashing his head, blood coming out. Eventually I pulled him and stopped him and I said, why are you doing this? He says, before I came here I was a very big businessman. And I decided to marry a non-Jew, despite my parents begging me not to. After the Nazis took control, they started looking for us in every house. And one day, they come to my house, and the one that showed them where it is was my wife. So you see the one that's pointing at us and yelling, keep going, keep going? That's her. So the same head that went against my parents because I thought that my logic was better, the same head that went against my forefathers because I thought that I was wiser, the same head that went against Hashem Yitbarach because I thought that I created myself somehow, I'm smashing that same head because that's the head that got me here. Now that we know that we have a serious problem and that Hashem made many, many other events that we can't go over into each one of them because I'm assuming at some point you guys want to sleep. Now that we know that we have a large portion of Am Yisrael that's in trouble because they have no idea that they have a disease. When you don't know that you're sick, you're not going to look for the cure. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who preceded the Gemara, who wrote the Mishnah, put it together. He said in Masechet Shabbat, page 54, if someone sees his friend sinning and doesn't say anything, he takes on the sin himself. So someone went to a lecture, started keeping Shabbat. They arrive at Olam Haba, happy. I started keeping Shabbat 50 years ago. Baruch Hashem. They show up to the Bet Din of Shamayim, very proud. And the Bet Din of Shamayim says, oh, you're the Mechalel Shabbat we've been waiting for. No, it's me. No, I went to Rav Mizrahi's lecture, started keeping Shabbat. What are you talking about? It's like, no, you're the one. Yeah. Let me see. They look at the picture, look at him. Yep, same guy. Says, how? Maybe there's a mistake. Says, no mistake. You remember your roommate? You remember your brother? You remember your sister? You remember your colleague at work? Why didn't you tell him about Shabbat? The fact that you didn't tell them and you knew that by violating Shabbat they're cutting themselves out of the nation of Israel and putting themselves on a first-class ticket to eternal suffering. You knew this and you didn't say anything? How do you expect to go to Gan Eden? With blood on your hands. The same Gemara says if someone has the influence on an entire city But he wants to be politically correct because otherwise he won't get donations. He wants to be politically correct because he wants everyone to like him on YouTube. He wants to get 1 million views. He wants to be popular on the internet so they can invite him to congressional meetings in the White House. We have people like this, unfortunately. One of them even wrote a stupid book called The Kosher Jesus. He calls himself an Orthodox rabbi. Chilul Hashem like you wouldn't know. And he's invited to the White House in a regular, because he's politically correct. So politically correct, idol worship became legal. So you want to be politically correct, and you actually have the ability to go to the White House and influence the world. That Am Yisrael is supposed to be Or LaGoyim, a light to the nations. Am Yisrael is the most important nation in the world. You're supposed to wake up your own nation because Hashem gave you this power of speech, this power of popularity, this siyata dishmaya, and you're using it to make money with books. You're taking on all of their sins. And if you're Gdol Ador, where you could influence the entire world, and you don't rebuke them, the same Gemara says you take all of their sins. So being popular has a cost. But this does not eliminate our own personal responsibility. As I'm sure you've heard throughout your entire life, and I'm sure several times over the last few days, they say that the Churban Beit HaMikdash HaSheni happened because of sinat chinam, baseless hatred. Now most people are like I used to be, and they think that it's just because the Ashkenazi hates the Sephardic hates the Ashkenazi, the Yemenite hates both of them, the Bukharian doesn't get along with some and likes the others, everyone thinks their food is the best, the tefillah of this one is better, the tefillah of that one is not good. They think that's the sinat chinam we're talking about. I'm here to tell you that's only 1%. 1%. What's the 99%? Rabbi Yonatan Eibishitz lived about 200 years ago, spent his life, complete mesirut nefesh, self-sacrifice, trying to help Am Yisrael do tshuva. There was not a day that the people did not go against him, calling him names, beating him up, anything and everything you can do, even trying to ruin his reputation. But he continued sacrificing himself, looking for any Jew he can find so he could help them by showing them their way home, showing them the way back to Hashem Yitbarach. Rabbi Yonatan Eibishitz, he says the number one sinat chinam we have for over 2,000 years, and we're not even close to fixing it. He says when one Jew sees another sinning and he says nothing, that's sinat chinam. Because the one that learned some Torah in yeshiva, the one that went to kollel, the one that knows what an halacha is, even the one that knows what Hashem is, he already knows more than most people. And he also knows a little bit about the consequences of not following your Creator. And as the Rav said earlier today, your boss. So Rabbi Yonatan says, if you know the consequence and you don't tell somebody something, there's no one more evil than you. What is it like? If you saw a train going really fast on a track and your friend, your brother, your sister, your colleague, your neighbor, a human being, anything, was standing on the tracks, would you tell him to move? Or would you just let him get run over? When you don't tell him that violating Shabbat is worse than a train, when you don't tell a woman that's not modest that it's worse than a train, when you don't tell people that eating non-kosher pizza at Domino's and all types of non-kosher places is worse than a train, you just keep it to yourself. I don't want to offend them. It's not my business. That's sinat chinam. That's sinat chinam. So now that we have a little bit of a taste of how Hashem repeats himself, he's repeated himself in the Torah several times about both the reward and the punishment. If it wasn't enough to hear it from Parashat Bechukotai, from Hashem himself, we heard more details from Moshe Rabbeinu in Sefer Dvarim, in Parashat Ki Tavo. The punishments have more details. And if we didn't believe it, he made Bet HaMikdash happen. Bet HaMikdash HaRishon that we lost was for Avodah Zarah, Shfichut Damim, and Arayot, all types of sex crimes. And most people think that it's Avodah Zarah is like we just worship idols. We don't have that problem anymore. We're okay. We passed this test. Unfortunately, if the Bet HaMikdash HaRishon was still here, as the Rav said earlier today, it'd actually be destroyed instantly. And the reason why is because we're still committing the same sins. The sin of Avodah Zarah in those days was idols, but that wasn't it only. In our generation it mutated. It's called money. If you notice, the dollar bill has a statement on it. It says, "In God we trust." A lot of people take it literally and they think the dollar is God. This is the only way they can justify working 18 hours a day, barely seeing the family, barely seeing what a Sefer Torah looks like, barely connecting to the same one that's given them parnasah. Why? Because they figure that by working for money, they're connecting to him. Just the wrong him. Shfichut Damim, unfortunately in our generation, is still happening. Not that we're murderers of people, Baruch Hashem, but many of the younger generation, including young yeshiva kids that don't even know the significance of the sin, destroy souls every single day. It's called wasting seed. Scientists have estimated that an average person that ejaculates has 300 million seeds come out. This means it's 300 million opportunities for a soul. 300 million opportunities lost because you wanted 30 seconds of pleasure. There's a lot more details of this, but we had a lecture for about 3 hours, and another one for 1 hour, detailing how someone who wastes seed is building themselves a Gehenom in both this world and the next. Most people just thought it was the next. I'm telling you, it's here also. Scientific. There's a book written about 100 years ago, 180 years ago, detailing how it destroys the body. Bones become weaker, hair being lost, starts to grow at different places that it's not supposed to grow. You start losing your vision. You stop thinking straight. And you start doing all types of things that we think is just, we call it ADD in our generation. It's not ADD. As far as the next world, without elaborating too much, because there's a whole shiur about it, cancel out any good plans. Now the problem is not the kids. The problem is that we don't have enough education about this. When someone who just did tshuva a few years ago is the only one that did a shiur about it, other than Rav Mizrahi, of course, and Rav Alon Nava, it should tell you what kind of situation we're facing. When a yeshiva kid doesn't know that wasting seed is one of the worst possible sins he can make because he thinks he's learning Torah, so it's all good, then what do you think the Chiloni thinks? What do you think the secular kid who doesn't even know what Torah is? We have to start changing our education and start teaching our kids the truth. We also have to start teaching ourselves the truth, because that's our only way. So now that we have a diagnosis, we see that Hashem is repeating Himself, showing us that what He wrote in the Torah is promises, even when they were not very good promises, even when they're not favorable promises, even though we don't like to hear them. He says, when you go against me, I'll have to fulfill it. Because when I wrote the Torah, 974 generations before I created the world, I had to sign it. And my signature is Emet. Emet means truth. Emet means that it cannot change. And because I know that I love you so much, my children, I know that if I didn't sign it, I would change it for you. I would say, you know, Moshe Rabbeinu, Tzaddik, he has Gan Eden. Shmuley, he didn't keep Shabbat. He hung out with his friend Freddie. He didn't eat kosher, only at home at his parents' house. He wanted to go to the bar that made drinks look like fun, even though they didn't use kosher ingredients and it has all types of immodesty in the place. But he wanted to have fun. But he was a very funny guy. So he arrives at my office in Shamayim. I say, oh, you know, you're such a funny guy, I'm going to put you in a Gan Eden because I don't want to punish you, you're my son. But Hashem says, no, I can't do that. I wanted to do it, but I can't. Because then Moshe Rabbeinu is going to say, well, you signed it, Emet. You signed it, the Torah doesn't change. The Torah, you said, there's a din, there's a dayan. There's a punishment, and there's a reward. It's one of the 13 principles of faith. If you do not believe in punishment and reward, there's a safek of how Jewish you really are. If you were in a process of converting, they would not convert you. So Hashem says I had to sign it because I know that I would want to change it, but I can't. Because once I change it, then it's no longer emet. It's no longer relevant. Then Sodom and Gomorrah becomes normal. So Hashem Yitbarach did us a favor by giving us a little bit of instructions. What happens if we do good? What happens if we do bad? If you read the instructions, they're pretty simple to follow. Your reward is for Netzach Netzachim, it's eternity, and no good in the world could ever even explain or compare to 1 second of good in the next world. This is part of the reason why we don't have much details about the good in the next world, because our human minds cannot understand it. Bad we understand. Suffering we understand. So Hashem gave us more details about the suffering because we understand it. In the Gemara it says that Gehenom has no size. Gan Eden has a size. They give you the exact measurements of Gan Eden. But Gehenom, they say, has no size. Keeps growing. Put the two and two together, you realize that it has more attendees. It's good to know about this, because that's how you know how to avoid it. Chazal says that without Yirat Shamayim you cannot connect to Hashem. Most people have this theory that you're supposed to love Hashem. But Chazal says that a connection with Hashem Yitbarach that's purely based on fear, purely based on Yirat Shamayim, is an incomplete connection. It's a connection, but it's not complete. It's not perfect. A connection just based out of love, Chazal says there's no connection at all. It's impossible. It's impossible to love Hashem only. Why? As we learned from Sefer Yov, the Gemara Masechet Sotah says there's a machloket whether Yov served Hashem purely out of love or purely out of fear. One thing that everyone agrees with is that even if it was only fear, it was the highest level of fear. And Chazal tell us here, from here we learn that the highest level of fear of Hashem is just the beginning of loving Him. So anyone want to base their relationship with Hashem fully out of love, Ashrecha v'ashrech elkecha, but, little footnote, you have to fear Him first at the highest possible level that will challenge Job. By the way, Job has a sefer in the Torah. He's one of the 24 books. I'm not in there. I don't think anyone here is either. So to say that we can get to the level of Job, it's a little difficult to say. Yes, you can get to a love of Hashem, but pure love, very, very high level. I don't think it belongs in our generation. At least not for regular people. Let's try fearing Him first. The same sages that give us this very, very important instructions of how we need to fear Hashem, of when Shlomo HaMelech said that the beginning of wisdom is fearing Hashem, meaning that if you even want to think that you're wise, you can only have one sign. If you build a building, doesn't mean you're wise. Just means you know how to build a building. If you're a good diamond cutter, okay, you have a skill set. But wisdom, the beginning of wisdom is fear of the Almighty. Shlomo HaMelech, the smartest man that ever lived, said this. It means that if you even want to think about calling yourself wise, first you have to check if you have any Yirat Shamayim. If you have no Yirat Shamayim, you're not very different than the animal, Shlomo HaMelech says. Even the animal knows who's God. So these very same sages, they also told us, aside from this instruction set, they were kind enough to give us a little bit of insight about the end of days. As you can find it in the book of Jeremiah, there's some prophecies, book of Ezekiel, Zechariah, or you could just go to Gemara Masechet Sotah, page 49. Last page of the Gemara. It gives you all of the details of what's going to happen at the end of times. And it says all types of things that we will do right before the Mashiach will come. But once you start reading it, everything becomes familiar. It looks like you're reading the newspaper, because everything that they wrote is very much what we have today. So this very same Chazal that already told us what the signs are, we look at the signs, and we pretty much have every single sign that the Mashiach is going to come, except one. Mashiach. We have the red cow, we have a Pnei Adol Pnei Kelev, both a insinuation that the generation is going to be full of chutzpanim, full of rude people that have no shame, similar to a dog, touches himself whenever he wants. But also scientifically, there are actually pictures. If you look at dog owners and their dogs, they tend to look alike. No, it's not a joke, it's bemet. It's funny, but it's really serious. I have a picture. And you continue to see more and more of the prophecies they had in our grandparents' and great-grandparents' generation. The mother-in-law would be like a second mother. Chazal says that in the end of days, the mother-in-law will become an enemy, become a difficulty, will create shlom bayit issues, will break up marriages, will break up zivugim. No, he's not good enough for my daughter. No, she's not good enough for my son. You ever notice no one's ever good enough for anyone? It's also written in the Gemara. And many other things. We made a shiur in New York a few months ago, also on TorahAnytime.com, goes over this page. But one thing that the Gemara says that I want to finish with, it said that there's only two things that are going to save us at the time of Mashiach: Torah and Gemilut Chasadim. Torah is obvious. Start learning it, and then start following. It says keep Shabbat. That means every Shabbat, not 3 times a month. It says keep kosher. That's all the time, not just at home. It says modesty. That means even for men. So stop wearing skinny jeans. I don't have the picture with me, but skinny jeans were always something I detested. But I never really knew why. And then I saw, when I was in Israel doing a lecture tour over there, I saw a yeshiva kid running in front of me with skinny jeans and a tzitzit hanging out. He's running. I'm like, I've seen these pants before. And then Ishtabach Shimo La'ad, it clicked. Where did I see those pants? The pants that are wide on top and skinny on the bottom. Anyone can guess? Nazi Germany. It's the exact pants that Nazis used to wear. I actually made a picture with one of the helpers putting skinny jeans next to Nazi pants. No words. Because the picture can speak a million words. And I had a lecture in Israel and I asked them. It was Yom HaShoah. And I asked them all, you're all very sorry for the Holocaust, huh? Everybody says yes. You all know somebody that suffered in the Holocaust, huh? So everybody says yes. Somebody knew somebody. You all hate the Nazis, right? Everyone says yes. So why do you keep dressing like them? If it was just someone that's completely far from Hashem, lives in an Arab village, or in the middle of a jungle, I can understand. He has no idea what reality is. The problem is that this disgusting style has started to invest our religious communities. We have yeshiva kids wearing skinny pants because they want to be fashionable. So aside from not being modest, it's also livush goyim. We have a shiur about that too. So Hashem is telling us that you have to start complying with the Torah. That's 50% of the deal. Modesty for men. Of course, modesty for women. Women have to stop wanting to look like Sotah and look more like Sarah Imenu, Tzadikah. People have to start learning how to become human beings, become a light to the nations, work on their midot, connect to Hashem, build your emunah. That's Torah. Instructions are easy, maybe a little difficult to follow in the beginning, but over time you get used to it and actually start liking it. The second part is the part we're all confused about. Gmilut Chasadim. Most people think that Chesed, that it's being referenced by Gmilut Chasadim, is like giving someone a challah bread before Shabbat, or giving them a right to work. Although yes, that is Chesed, Ashrecha v'ashrech elkecha, may you be rewarded in this world and the next for giving them a challah, or giving some tzedakah, or giving them a ride to the shul or somewhere else. Good job. I hope you don't really believe that that's what's going to save you at the days of Mashiach. It's not that easy. Chazal says that the highest level of Gmilut Chasadim that one person can do for another is getting them close to Hashem. Because any other chesed that you do for him, any other kindness that you do for him, you can buy him bread every week for his whole life, you could take him to work for 50 years straight, you could donate for his cause, you could smile every time you see him. If he's not connecting to Hashem, none of it's going to help him in eternity. He's still going to get hit by the train. So connecting him to Hashem is the most important kindness that we have in this world, especially in this generation. Not only is it something that's going to save us in the days of Mashiach, but it's also something that we can get rewarded for in this world and the next. In the book of Jeremiah, the prophet tells us, Im tavi yakar mizolel kepi tiyeh. First, Jeremiah tells us, Hashem says, if you do tshuva, you'll stand next to me. Meaning, I'll always accept your tshuva. You won't be a second-rate citizen. I'll accept your tshuva. You'll stand next to me like you were a tzaddik your whole life. But if it's genuine tshuva. But if you make someone else do tshuva, im tavi yakar mizolel, you will be like my mouth. If you make somebody else do tshuva, you'll be like my mouth. And Chazal ask, what does it mean being like Hashem's mouth? And Hashem Yitbarach answers them and he says, I created the heaven and the earth and everything in between, and I can bring back the dead. You'll be able to do the same. Meaning, I'm able to change nature because I'm above nature, and your prayers will get first-class treatment. Your prayers will be answered. You have a completely different account with me. Why? Because if you take enough time to take care of my children and bring them back home, you're special. You're not like everybody else. So on one end, we know that it's a responsibility for us to do it, to be saved from the days of Mashiach that are coming very soon. On another end, we see the benefit, because there's not one person on earth that doesn't want their blessings to come true. But the last piece of the puzzle is, how do you do it? You have to be able to do kiruv on a regular basis, not just once in a while, in order for this to really come true. You have to support causes that really care about Am Yisrael getting back to Hashem. Your donations to Hanukkah parties are not it. Although it's nice, and you should donate to Hanukkah parties, because everyone likes to have fun once a year on Hanukkah and Purim, it's not going to save you at the times of Mashiach. What's going to save you at the time of Mashiach is getting a Jew to realize who's God. So you have organizations like Torah Anytime, that's complete mesirut nefesh to advertise Torah every day, putting people like me on, and Rav Mizrahi and many other great rabbis that tell the truth. You have organizations like Chazaq. You have shuls that allow the truth and welcome the truth to such an extent that they promote it, like Bet Gavriel. You have, of course, my organization, Be'ezratHashem.org, where we print out CDs and books and send them to different people all over the world to help them get back to Hashem. And of course, you have the rabbi that probably influenced every single one that's in this room, Rabbi Mizrahi, that's been influencing the nation for the last 22 years. So your choices are pretty simple. If you know how to speak, start talking. To your neighbor, to your friend, to your mom, to your dad, to your colleague. If you don't know how to speak, bring someone to speak. Arrange a lecture. It's not that hard anymore. Arrange a lecture, just like you arrange a birthday party, and you get 50 of your friends to show up. Okay, get 50 people to show up to a big knesset or a house, and listen to Torah. But bring a real rabbi. Don't bring a politically correct person. If you can't arrange a lecture because you're too busy with material and life in general, Hashem made it even easier for you. It's called a CD. Costs $1. Sponsor as many as you want. Rav Mizrahi CDs, my CDs, they're full of Torah. Each one of them has 30 hours of Torah lectures similar to this. And we give it to people for free to get them to do tshuva. And it's extraordinary. You want to give 1 CD, 5 CDs, 5,000 CDs, it doesn't make a difference. Do something. If you don't have any money, Hashem felt bad for you because He's the one that actually didn't give you the money. So He said, okay, you still have the ability to do kiruv. Yeah, you can't arrange lectures, and I didn't give you the ability to speak, and you don't have any money, but you spend half your day on the internet anyway, right? Okay, so copy and paste. Go to a link of a good Torah lecture, press copy, then press paste, and send it to as many people as possible. It's free. And I'll finish off with one thing. I have a student in Bulgaria. He's in the process of converting. Where he lives, there's not a site that is relevant to Judaism. Nothing. One day he realized that Shabbat is very important to Hashem, and he decided to quit his job. And he got a new job. The only job that he can find that would allow him not to work on Shabbat. He became a shepherd. Not much money, or glory in being a shepherd, unless you look at David HaMelech, Moshe Rabbeinu, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the 12 tribes. In our generation, if you're not involved with iPods and apps and internet, it's not a glorious job. We're not here to have a glorious job, guys. So he became a shepherd so he could keep Shabbat. And he could study Shulchan Aruch and all types of halachot to get ready for his conversion. In the process, he asked me, what else can I do for Am Yisrael? What else can I do for Hashem? I told him the answer to both is the same. Do kiruv. Do zikui rabim. Get people back to Hashem. Show them Torah. And that's what he's been doing for the last several months. But that's not the story. The story is that earlier this week, or last week now, he had his Brit Milah. Now when you're 8 days old, and you have a Brit Milah, it's not exactly a big deal. I don't think anyone remembers it. You remember it? Shrecha. I don't remember it, Baruch Hashem. Most people don't remember it. It's not to be funny, it's true. Chas v'shalom, I don't want to embarrass anyone. Sure, I don't remember it, and most people don't remember, don't have that kind of memory. I have a decent memory, I remember almost everything since I was the age of 3. But 8 days old, I don't remember. I'm glad I don't remember it. When you're a grown man, though, and you have a Brit Milah, it's tough to forget. It's a tough experience. So the day that he had his Brit Milah, I was expecting him to obviously be in pain, laying down, relaxing, letting time pass so the pain goes away. Having a little bit of familiarity with pain for 7 years, I thought that that would be an understatement. I thought that he would probably just stay in the hospital until the pain goes away. I would be. But instead I see him back on the internet, posting Torah lessons, my Torah lessons, Rabbi Mizrahi's Torah lessons, and other great rabbis showing the truth. And I couldn't help myself, and I asked him, Emmanuel, what are you doing? Did they not do the Brit Milah? He says, no, I finished. I said, are you in pain? And he says, yes. So why don't you go lay down? He says, what would Am Yisrael do without Torah? If I don't post the Shiurim, who's going to post the Shiurim instead of me? Who's going to get them back to Hashem? So Be'ezrat Hashem, when the Mashiach comes, he's going to ask each and every one of us, what did you do for Hashem? If you answer, I learned Torah, Mashiach is going to tell you, you did that for you. That was your ticket in. Say, I did mitzvot. You say, yes, that was also for you. That was exercising the ticket. What did you do for Hashem? It's going to be a hard question. But when he asks Emmanuel, what did you do for Hashem? Emmanuel can answer. You know, the day that I had a Brit Milah, I posted some Torah lectures online, and about 1,500 people did tshuva over time because of them. And no one even knew it was me posting it. That's what I did for Hashem. What are you going to say? What excuse are you going to use? If someone that is not even obligated to do kiruv is doing kiruv on the toughest day of his life, we have to understand, it's time to take this seriously. Be'ezrat Hashem, this influences and touches your hearts to start taking 5 minutes a day, doing kiruv in some way. Again, your choices are endless. Money, speech, time, contribution in some way or another. Save the nation so we don't have to chas v'shalom repeat this holiday again next year. Amen. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.